And this, of course, has led us to DNA. And DNA is very much the Shekinah or the sine wave that I was describing last night, the daughter principle that is the carrier wave. And this is very exciting that we're beginning to discover the code of life. However, if we just think of it at a scientific level, once again, we're limited. Because what happens is, when you take spirit out of matter, when we presume that we can do that, then we think that we can do anything. And this is one of the things that happened in Atlantis, where they began to breed animals to humans and create a slave race, basically, to serve them. And in doing so, they overstepped their boundaries, basically, because every animal species has overlighting angelic energies, and so did the human kingdom. And when you start combining them, it's really an abomination. It's not the right thing to do. And of course, this has been going on in secret with our own secret government in Dulce. That 10-story underground base at Dulce, where they've been doing these same kinds of atrocious experiments. Imagine what kind of soul would be trapped in one of those bodies behind cages and bars to be dissected. What a horror for the soul that incarnated in that form. So we have to ask if we're going too far with all this stuff. For example, genetically modified foods. Nothing wrong with wanting to grow a bigger tomato, but when Monsanto starts breeding tomatoes with rat DNA, and they have, the body can't recognize it. It can't assimilate it. And we get sicker and sicker and sicker. And so some of the staples, which are corn, wheat, rice, soy, these are some of the great staples, and unfortunately they've really perverted a lot of them, so now people are having all sorts of allergies to wheat and to corn and corn syrups and everything. So, in an effort to put a patent on something like the Terminator seeds that don't grow seeds, and the poor farmers that are growing healthy seeds, the heirloom seeds, if the Terminator seeds come over and land in their lot, they wind up being charged, and even being charged for having the heirloom seeds because Monsanto wants to make a profit. So there's a great travesty going on, and I would just urge all of you, I know it's really annoying with our emails, but join. I've got a list, if you're interested, of about 6 pages of organizations that are trying to help animals, trying to help the earth, trying to help the ocean. If you're interested in any of this, come by, get my email me and say, send me that list. And then you can pick what you resonate with. And even if you just sign petitions or you give $20 a year to 5 organizations, it helps, because 10,000 people giving $20 a year gives them the funds to begin to fight some of this madness and some of these decisions. And it's really up to us to just say no. Just say no. And we can do that with our dollars and with our petitions and signing. For example, the cloning experiments of Dolly. You guys remember Dolly the sheep? Of course, she died quickly. But, there are people who believe, I don't know if this is true, that they're cloning humans. I have no idea if that's true or not. But some of these crazy people, I'm not sure I would really put it past them. They've also asked whether we should revive extinct species. Well, okay, so I'm not sure if we should revive these extinct species, because some species, they had their time on the planet, and now it's time for them to go. Why don't we just save the species we've got? The elephants are really hurting. The big cats, the lions are really hurting. There's a lot of species. The turtles are hurting. There's so many. So let's just save the ones we've got rather than letting the scientists go mad with test tubes so they can create a Jurassic Park. This is also a time when the goddess is remembered, where the divine feminine comes back. And this, as I described last night, is the pearl of great price that all beings seek, because in the heart of creation lies this presence of this nurturing oneness, the great ocean of love and mercy from which we all emerged. Now, the person who began to bring this into scientific evidence was a woman named Maria Gumbadas, and she was Yugoslavian, and she was taught by her grandmother a lot of the hermetic symbols of the divine feminine. So when she became an archaeologist and came over here and went to Harvard and Yale and got all of her credentials and eventually went back to the Mediterranean and spent 15 years doing excavations there, when she began to uncover these symbols of this goddess culture, a culture that was not ruled by women. It was ruled by men and women in partnership together. She discovered there were no defensive walls, there were no weapons except for maybe hunting, and that everyone lived in peace. But she also discovered, this is, by the way, the Wildendorf goddess that goes back 40,000 years. And they're the goddess of LaSalle. There's a number of these I talk about in the Divine Sophia book. And she had to write, about 4 or 5 of these gigantic, huge archaeological books in order to be taken seriously. But nonetheless, the boys' club didn't even want to really look at it because it really was not, in their worldview. So this is a time really when the divine feminine face of God must be remembered, must reemerge for us in order to balance it with the positive masculine and to give us another alternative. And to this end, Mary, the mother, has been making apparitions all over the world for several hundred years, talking about forgiveness and peace and changing the path of the destruction that we have been on. It's a time when we have an opportunity to begin to balance the masculine and feminine within ourselves and also within our societies, within our cultures, within our worlds. And America's the leader of this. I mean, make no mistake. When the feminist movement first began, the women, a lot of them were so angry because they had had no rights for so long, and they were tired of being stuck in the kitchen, basically being, cooks and mothers and sex slaves and not having any freedom and being abused. Even today, the statistics are 50% of every woman killed in America is killed by her husband or by her boyfriend. I'm not kidding you. That's in America. Russia, they just passed a law that a husband can beat up his wife the first time without any legal punitive recompense. He gets one free pass to beat her up. And this really comes from a time where we've tried to track it. The Kurgans came down about 1800 BC. The Jews became very patriarchal, and they weren't for a really long time. The Semitic tribes, the Syrians, those guys are always getting into trouble, bless their hearts, right? And, even the Phoenicians. So we've tried to track where this patriarchal wave came from, but it was part of the cycles of time. And we just got out of balance, and we haven't returned to balance yet, but that's what we're working on.